Since this is the kind of life that we have chosen, the life of the Spirit, let us make sure that we do not just hold it as an idea in our heads or a sentiment in our hearts, but work out its implications in every detail of our lives. That means we will not compare ourselves with each other as if one of us were better and another worse. We have far more interesting things to do with our lives. Each of us is an original. Live creatively, friends. If someone falls into sin, forgivingly restore him, saving your critical comments for yourself. You might be needing forgiveness before the day's out. Stoop down and reach out to those who are oppressed. Share their burdens and so complete Christ's law. If you think you are too good for that, you are badly deceived. Make a careful exploration of who you are and the work you have been given, and then sink yourself into that. Don't be impressed with yourself. Don't compare yourself with others. Each of you must take responsibility for doing the creative best you can with your own life. That's found in the last part of Galatians chapter 5 and the beginning of Galatians chapter 6. And I'm reading to you from the Message. Okay. Now, Mike has been going through with you on the model of man that we use, of the body, soul, and the spirit. And the spirit has got three functions: intuition, communion, and conscience. The functions of the soul are mind, will, and emotions. And the functions of the body are reproduction, defense, and food. So what we're going to deal with is the functions of the soul, the mind, the will, and the emotions. And as we share them, we're going to do some fun things together. You have already received your test that's been graded and found out some things about yourself. And we will deal with some of those near the end when we put up the chart that's similar to the test that you've done, and we'll share that together. It's been exciting sharing with you. Some of you are amazed that we even know what you're like without ever having met you. And that surprises you, doesn't it? And so we're going to share through that with you, and in this way you'll see that being articulated and understandable to you. God made each one of us unique. As we just read in the scriptures, we are originals. God is not in the cookie-cutting business. He's made all of us so different, and we contribute differently to life. We have a unique self, and our unique self is like a prism. That is, a prism receives light and sends it out in all kinds of different facets and colors. We receive God's light, and we send it out in all kinds of different expressions. Your unique expression of what He has made you cannot be denied. You are unique, and life is interpreted through your uniqueness. You have a totally different frame of reference to life than I do. I see my world in a certain way. You see your world in a certain way. And so life is interpreted through your frame of reference, through your uniqueness. An understanding of a unique self makes such a tremendous difference in the way that we live and how we can enjoy others instead of judging them. Now, there's just one thing that I'll mention before we go into dividing up the mind, the will, and the emotions and sharing those with you, is that there is a difference, a distinct difference between a man and a woman in the way that they function. So basically and initially, we know that men and women are different. The hormones that drive a man are testosterone, and the hormones that drive a woman are oxytocin. Now, that and therein lies some of the great conflicts and the confusion that comes in relationships right there, before we even go to the functions that take place in the mind, will, and emotions. So with testosterone, a man is goal-oriented. So a man actually fits everything into a box. He locks in. With the hormonal drive that a man has, he locks in and he goes in. He's working and he's in. He's watching sport and he's in. You just watch a guy when he's sitting down, a guy that's interested in sport, and when he sits down to watch it, he doesn't hear anybody saying anything. His wife can be calling for him, his friend can be calling for him, and they can be telling him something interesting, and he says, "Did you notice that? Did you see the try? Did you notice the touchdown? Didn't you see that?" Because he's completely locked in. He locks into his job, he locks into his work, he locks into his sport. Whatever facet of life a man is interested in, he comes to it and he clicks in. And when he clicks in, he gets like tunnel vision. That's the direction in which he goes. That's the direction in which he's motivated. When it comes to intimacy with a man, he then goes for the goal. He's just interested in the goal. Now, he knows nothing about the journey. What are you talking about, candlelight supper? What do you want to talk about? Why should you choose to talk at this time? Couldn't we have talked earlier on this afternoon? Because the man immediately locks in. So he thinks about the goal. And you see, that's why, for most men, sex is on the agenda when it comes to intimacy. And that's why most men don't understand intimacy. Because we have two problems that there is in associations with men and women. And that is, there are a lot of couples, and they talk, but they don't communicate. They have sex, but they're not intimate. And intimacy is something that a man has to learn. It doesn't generally come naturally for him unless he's a high feeler. So he generally just locks into the goal. Sex now is because what's important. Now, for a man who now fits into the box, work, sport, sex, the goal, whatever it is, that's what a man's like. That's how we're driven. What a woman's like, with oxytocin, she's like this. Everything's just mixed up in the same bag. She thinks, she feels, she acts, it all takes place in there. Now, what a woman is interested in now is a woman is interested in the journey. And if the goal doesn't take place, it doesn't bother her. And one of the great problems with men, and especially with younger men, and we read it from these magazines which do not give us a good indication of relationships, is that men think that performance is the most important thing. And if they can really perform for a woman, then a woman will be satisfied. But a woman is not that interested in the goal, because unless a woman enjoys the journey, the goal doesn't mean a thing. And what really frustrates a woman is that a man could come home from work, he could even have gone to work in the morning. He's in a bad mood at breakfast. He grumps over the top of the paper and then takes off, doesn't kiss her, doesn't say goodbye, isn't really interested, and he just takes off, goes off to work, comes home in the afternoon, things are not that much better, where's my tea, what have you been doing today? His attitude's not improved, and some of them verbally abuse and some of them physically abuse. And one of the things that I have found with women coming to my office for counseling is they can't for the world of them understand how could a man who is verbally abusing with a bad attitude, doesn't want to talk about anything, and then he wants to go to bed and make love. How could that possibly be? But he has forgotten, because he wasn't locked in to sex at that point. He was working with something else. But now he's locked in to making love. he's locked into the goal. And in being locked into the goal, he's forgotten about being angry. He's forgotten about being violent. He's forgotten about being abusive. He's forgotten it all because he's locked in. But the woman who's not locked in, she's now mixed up with all of her feelings. And how could he possibly want me? And so there comes a lot of resentment. There comes a lot of bitterness. There comes a lot of animosity. And in the end, she doesn't even want to be with him. So there's a great confusion takes place without understanding. Do you know that I had a young man, his wife came to me, they had been married for a few years, and he had been a young man in the world, had been around a lot, had a lot of girlfriends, a lot of experience with girlfriends, and his wife came to talk to me, 2 young children, and she said to me, I think our marriage is over if something doesn't happen to my husband. And did you know that I took him away? He was in such a bad state. We went away for 4 days and booked out into a motel. And I spent 4 days in sessions with him, teaching him what a woman was like. Teaching him how to understand a woman. Teaching him how to understand her feelings. Teaching him to understand where she came from. And teaching him to understand what it means for a woman to want the journey rather than the goal. It was hard to believe that he hadn't the singlest clue about understanding where she came from. So you see, when a man is going to that place locked into a goal, he doesn't have time to chitter-chatter. And what annoys him most is when he just goes to bed, lies down in bed, and then she wants to talk at the very most intimate moment to him. She wants to talk about the kids. She wants to talk about what's happening through the day. She wants to talk about the work. Because a woman wants to talk. She wants to share. She wants to be touched. She wants to be held. She wants to be accepted. She wants to enjoy the journey rather than the goal. And so there comes a lot of the confusion and the frustration before we even start. The mind, will, and emotions in the 2 various drives through the hormones in their body. Okay. Paul divides people into 3 categories in the body. You have the muscle member, and the more muscle, the more you get your own way. Then you have the perfectionistic organs, which is the thinker, and then you have those that have to do with the senses. So we have the will, which is the muscle member. We have the mind, which is the perfectionist thinker. And then we have the emotions, which is the feeler. Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Who do you think the way appeals to? Well, the doer. The doer is interested in the way. The doer is interested in getting out and making something happen. I am the truth. Who does the truth appeal to most? To the thinker. You'll have noticed that I have put on some of yours that you're high thinkers, that you demand truth, both of yourself and other people. If you're a thinker, the one thing you don't want is somebody to lie to you. And it's more important for them to tell you the truth, no matter what they have done, as long as they're truthful. You demand truth. So when Jesus said, I am the truth, that really appeals to the thinker. And then he said, I am the life. Who does that appeal to? Well, the feeler, because the feeler is connected to life and they enjoy life. Let's just make 1 or 2 illustrations from this. Let's say that I go to a restaurant with a thinker, feeler, doer. And so we're all sitting down, and we have ordered a salad. And as we're eating the salad, I finish up getting a bit of lettuce stuck right between my teeth. Now, if you have a thinker sitting there, they'll look up and they'll see me. And they'll see the bit of lettuce stuck between my teeth. And they go, thinker just obsesses. When they see something, they just obsess. So they just keep looking at this piece of lettuce. And no matter what's going to happen for the rest of that time during that we're going to have dinner, that's what they're going to be looking at. That's what's going to fill their mind. That's what's going to take up their attention. Because they just focus in right on one thing. And that's all they can see. So they're just keeping looking all the time at this piece of lettuce between my teeth. And then the feeler looks up. And she sees the lettuce between my teeth. And immediately, she starts blushing. She gets embarrassed for me. And starts feeling real terrible. Oh no, poor Ray. Oh no, he doesn't even know it's there. Oh, this is terrible. Oh, does anybody see it? Does anybody else see it? Does anybody else notice? Should I tell him? Oh, I know if I tell him, he'll get so embarrassed. He'll feel so bad. I can't tell him. But then if I don't tell him and we go outside and he finds out that I knew, then I'll feel worse still. Oh no, what should I do? And so they just sit there feeling real embarrassed for me. And instead of looking like the thinker, they'll look up. Still there. I wish somebody'd tell him. So they just get real embarrassed. And then the doer looks up and sees the piece of lettuce between my teeth. And he just looks, goes into his pocket, pulls out his penknife, and just opens it and reaches over and flicks it out between my teeth. And in the process, cuts my lip. And I said, no, I get blood coming out of me. What are you doing? He said, stop whinging. That's what Band-Aids are for. See the reaction of 3 different people to my little piece of lettuce. Let's go to a parking lot and look at these 3 different kinds of people in a parking lot. Now, if you go down to the supermarket and you see all these lines that's drawn where your car parks, the one thing you know is those lines were drawn by a thinker. They put them there. So we have a thinker who's going to come in to the parking lot ready to go shopping. Now, he's usually driving a car which he has taken all morning to clean up, to make it look good, so that when he gets down there, his car is just going to look the best when he gets into the parking lot. Now, he's not going to go very far down towards the entrance to the parking lot because he wants to sit back a little because he doesn't want people coming, opening car doors so that they're going to scratch his paintwork. His car is very important to him. So he comes in, drives into the car park, goes in between the lines, he's got to be 6 inches either side. The car's got to be parked exactly in the right spot, and so he'll go backwards and he'll go forwards and he'll go in and out, and then finally he'll park. Excuse me, love? How far am I away from the white line over your side? And they'll sit there adjusting their parking spot until they get it right. And then he gets out, and I don't know why this happens, but you know, I find this pretty humorous times when I go down. And when you're doing this sort of thing, we keep looking for all kinds of examples. And I really do stand and watch people in parking lots to see what they do. And I don't know why it is, but when I watch a thinker getting out of their car, they come back from their car after they have just locked it up, and then they go back and they try the doors again. Now, they know they have locked the car, but they just try the doors. They go and check the doors. If they have one of these little machines that automatically locks the door, they do it a couple of times just to hear it flick up and down to make sure that the thing is properly locked. And then they'll go for a little walk around to the front and around to the back. I don't know whether they're trying to remember their number plate, or whether they're just examining the car to see exactly the condition that it's in, but they actually take time before they leave the car. When they're satisfied that everything's in order, they're properly parked, the car's right, everything's right, they're ready to head off. And just as they're heading off to go into the supermarket, here comes a feeler. And they're flying in an old bomb car. The windows are down, and the music's blasting everywhere. And they're just coming screeching in, and suddenly they look up, and one of their friends is just about to go through the entrance into the supermarket. And the first thing they can think about is, I've got to catch him. I've got to get hold of him. So they just go in, and white lines means nothing to them. They just go straight across the car park, over the white line, slam the door shut, and head off. They don't lock the door. There's nothing there worth taking. They have used it, and so has every one of the rest of their friends used it. So it doesn't matter to them. So they just go straight in. They've got to catch up with their friends. That's the focus. That's where they're going. Friendship. That's what we've got to be with. So they just head straight in, and they're ready to go. Now, they've gone, and here comes the thinker. No, it's all right. You can do my next session. It'll be fine. Here comes the thinker, and the thinker walks past and looks at this car that's just been parked by the feeler. Listen, love, just a moment. Did you have a look at this? Just have a look at that. Could you imagine that people could be that inconsiderate? I don't believe that somebody could park. Why do people go to the trouble of putting white lines down in a car park if people can't park over the white line? Inside the white lines, why do they park over it? So, these people need a little note. Thinkers are the world's policemen. Thinkers are the town sheriff. We've got to make sure that these rules are enforced and let these people know they're not just going to get away with it. So, they write a little note. Please note, in future, would you park between the white lines or the yellow lines, whatever it is in the car park? Somebody else could park there. See, they already had a park. They're not needing their parking space. And I don't know that they're that interested in anybody else finding a parking space. They're just interested in people keeping the rules. Because they set the rules, people have got to keep the rules, and we're going to enforce the rules. So now they write a little message, and then they put it under the wiper blade for the feeler to come back. Well, now the feeler has gone into the supermarket. They have chatted with their friends. And what they have done is whatever they're looking for, whatever they want, they don't quite know till they get there. But the one thing that a feeler will do is when they go into a supermarket, they'll just go and look for whatever it is that's on special. And whatever has got the brightest colors. That looks good, I'll have that. Now you'll notice, and of course one of the big things about marketing is that it's all done with different kinds of colors. And they have proven the kind of people that they are targeting with particular colors. And feelers are affected by things that are free or discounts and by the brightest. Now they'll just buy the brightest. It mightn't be the best, but if it's bright and it's colorful, that'll do. That'll suit me. And they just grab a little basket and they just toss it in. They just toss in whatever they can see. Of course, the thinker arrives in, and if you watch a thinker when they come to the supermarket, they already have a list. They know exactly what aisle to go up. And there's nothing frustrates a thinker more than when the supermarket changes their goods. How dare they? I've been coming here for years. Why should they move this? Because they start at a certain aisle and they work their way up the aisles until they've completed their shopping. They pull down a particular tin, they turn it over, they've got to read the ingredients. What's in this? What's the cholesterol levels? What's good for me? So they read everything and get everything through the list. Now, they mightn't have a list in their hand, but they sure got a list in their head. So they go in with a list. Now, as they're coming out of the supermarket, the feeler reaches his car. Oh, something under my windshield. Somebody's giving away something. Good. Somebody's giving away something. Something's free. And they grab it and read it. I don't believe it. Could you believe? Look at it. You know, some people have nothing to do with their life but stand down and try to mind everybody else's business. You'd think that they'd just keep their nose out of our business. I'll park where I like. Throw the thing down in the ground. Which really, of course, now infuriates the thinker when they're heading back to their car. But now we have the doer. And the doer comes to the supermarket. He drives in, and all the spices near the door are full. So where does he go? There's 2 or 3 places that a doer will go. A doer will find a place, and he's usually driving something like a BMW with a sunroof. And he comes in, and he just finds a place that his car just fits. So he just squeezes it in. And his wife says, hold on a minute, love. What about the people next to us? How are they going to get into their car? He said, well, it doesn't matter. All we've got to be concerned about is getting out of our car. And anyhow, they should have a car like ours. So he just climbs out of the sunroof. Or he goes down and he just goes straight in and he parks in the handicap spot. Now, I have stopped sometimes and I've actually watched some people to see when they've gone into a handicap spot just to see whether they're actually handicapped. And you see, that's the problem, because he's just parking in the handicap spot as the thinker was coming back. And a thinker can't help themselves. They're going to stand there and they're going to wait to find out whether or not this person's really handicapped. And then they're going to give them a piece of their mind. But see, a doer will go into the handicap spot and the thinker says, did you know that you were parked in a handicap spot? Can't you read? Don't you know? And the doer just turns around and said, listen, them people need some exercise. It'll do them good. And he just heads straight into the supermarket. Everybody's attitude to doing something is so totally different. One of the things that amuses me, and I've watched this a number of occasions, is that I have got a gentleman who lives with us, and we call him Dad. He's 91 years old. Now, only last year, he's not my actual dad, but he's been with us for so long, and my wife nursed his wife through illness, and she died, and so on. And so he just lives with us, and he does a tremendous job around our place. He's a high thinker. And he used to be a curator in the Brisbane cricket grounds. So he has always looked after my lawns and my roses and the shrubs and the bushes and done everything around the place. In fact, I only stopped him last year from mowing my lawns when he was 90. I decided that it was getting dangerous because the mower was about to take him out over the edge onto the next block. But when he did the lawns, and you know what cricket grounds are like, when he did the lawns, he would go right round the lawns and he'd go down one side and there's this lovely pattern. and he'd come back the other way, and he would be creating a pattern in the lawn. And he never talked about mowing the lawns. He always talked about giving the lawns a haircut. Because the grass had to be the same height all over. So he would mow it, trim the edges, and look absolutely wonderful. Well, I was never going to mow the lawns while he was around. He was just doing them perfectly. But my son, who's a doer, he's married, but he comes home to do the lawns sometimes for us. Well, Mark comes in. He goes into the garage to get the mower. And I'm in the office, and I'm listening. And I can hear this. Pull, 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 pull. And this thing going. I thought, Nelson's 90 years old, and he can get this thing started a lot faster. What's wrong with him? Finally, I can just hear him going on and on and on and on. So I come out of my office, and I go over to him, and I said, Mark, have you checked if there's any fuel in this thing? Didn't think about it. What's in his mind? Just getting the lawn mowed. That's all it is. Get this thing out, get this job done, and get out of here. So we fill the thing up with fuel, and now it actually starts. So Nelson already has come out to supervise, the high thinker. He's going to supervise, see how it's done. Well, Mark, what he does is he just gets the mower and goes right up one side. He gets to the end, and he grabs the mower the other way and comes back. And turns around, goes the other way, then grabs the mower, walks backwards. He's not watching where he's going. He's not watching whether he's getting the same path. He's not watching where it's going. He's just not watching what he's doing. He just thinks about getting this going, getting it done. So Nelson walks up to me and he said, they don't take any notice anymore, do they? You can't get a job done properly anymore, can you? You know, they won't listen to advice, will they? And I said, Nelson, just let's be thankful he actually came to do it. But Mark has no time, because the doer is going to get the lawns done. That's his goal. That's his objective. It may not be the best. It may not be quality, but he's got it done. One of my other children comes out to mow the lawn, and they're a feeler. The lawnmower's going, hear it being mowed, and then suddenly you can hear the mower seems to be going, but nothing seems to be happening. I look out the window, and here is the mower sitting in the middle of the lawn, and they're just not to be seen. The feeler's gone. Well, just a moment, what's happened? Why are they gone? The lawn's half done, it's not finished, and the lawnmower's going, and they're not to be seen. And then, next thing, car drives up, out they come, and I say, where have you been? And they said, oh, I'm sorry, Dad, I'm just so sorry. One of my friends just came, and we had to go off and look at something. And so, because they are relationally oriented, what they do is they just leave the mower. It doesn't matter about that, because the task now becomes very secondary. And all they're interested in is getting away with their friends. They're only interested in their friends. So the thinker will do it perfectly, neat, tidy, exact, and proper. The doer, the objective is to get it finished, and the feeler, it doesn't matter if it never gets finished. If my friends come, that's what will take the priority. You know, when you get a thinker, feeler, doer coming down to a stop sign, a thinker will drive their car, bring it up to the stop sign, And if you were to get out, you would see the front tire just about on the line. They've stopped. They've observed the rules. Great. The feeler's coming down, and usually they never see too many of the signs, because they're either listening to music or they're talking to somebody, because there are very few feelers who travel by themselves. Feelers have usually got a carload in, and you hear them yahooing or talking or chatting or doing whatever, and they come up to a stop sign, and then suddenly they realize they've hit it, and you hear the screeching of brakes, and they pull up and the car skids over, but at least they've stopped. There was this farmer who was a doer, and he came down into town, and he came to the stop sign. And when he came to the stop sign, he just tapped his brake, slowed down, and off he went. Next thing, a policeman pulls him up. And the policeman said to him, he said, "Did you know that you went over a stop sign? You didn't stop." He said, "I slowed down." He said, "But you didn't stop." He said, "But I slowed down." He said, "Well, if you do it again," he said, "you're going to be fined. I'll give you a ticket." So next day, the farmer comes down, comes to the stop sign, taps his foot on the brake, off he goes. Same policeman pulls him up. He gives him a ticket. He said, "Now you don't want to do that again." So the next day, down comes the farmer, down into town, taps his foot on the brake, and down he goes. Here's the same policeman. The guy winds down the window. The policeman takes out his truncheon, reaches in, grabs the bloke's head, pulls it through the window, and he starts belting him over the head with his truncheon. And he said to him, "Tell me, do you want me to slow down or stop?" Do you know that sometimes that's the only way you can get the attention of a doer? You got to belt them over the head so you can get their attention, because they don't like the rules, and they don't like the authorities, and they don't like somebody telling them what to do. So you need to sometimes bring a piece of 4x2 to get their attention. Okay, we've been kind of hard on the doers. Doers can handle it, you know. They can take it. When I have doers in my office and I'm working with them, I can usually tell them all the weaknesses of their temperament to get their attention. But for a thinker, I have to mix up some of their weaknesses with their strengths, because if I don't, and I read out all the weaknesses to them, they wouldn't come back because they've committed suicide. They can't handle being told all of their weaknesses or their faults. If I was on a ship and it was going down, I tell you this, I would want to be on it with a doer. Because the doer says, "Okay, you guys, I want you to take off your belt. You ladies, I want your pantyhose. We're going to tie some things together. We're going to make a raft, and we're going to get off of here." Well, it's a plan. They're going to have a plan. A doer's always got a plan. But the thinker is standing back, holding onto his pants. And he says, "Has this ever worked before? Have you ever seen this done? Never mind that the water is coming up 3 foot a minute. He has to process the information. He has to know whether it works or not. I'm not going to be caught with my pants down if this thing doesn't work. And there he stands processing it. And then we have the feeler. And the feeler is just bawling his eyes out. And he comes over and he puts his arms around my shoulders. And he says, "Oh, Ray," he said, "it's just such a pity. And you got a wife and 3 children. Oh, it's so sad." And then he goes over and he grabs a guitar that he's had there. And he said, "Let's sing together." And he starts strumming, "Abide with me, fast falls the eventide." And then he's got everybody weeping. See, we need a doer. Every one of us are original. Every one of us are unique. Every one of us have our own expression. And we all do things so entirely differently. One of the things about understanding your temperament is it lessens your judgment of another. It lessens your criticism of another person. One of the things that I delight in when I'm counseling people is that when they begin to know that that's the kind of person that they are, then they become more accepting of themselves. And when you become accepting of yourself, then you become more accepting of another person. And then we begin to enjoy other people rather than condemning them and rather than judging them. Because my frame of reference is the way I understand my world, so I'm thinking it should all come back to me the same way. And during the time that we're going to be talking together on the unique self, and dealing with some of these illustrations and putting them together with some of the material that we will get into on unique self, we will see just how beautiful it is, how wonderful it is that God has made each one of us original, that we don't have to compare ourselves with each other, but this is the way that God made me. And now I take the instructions of Galatians 6 and verse 2, and in that instruction it says that we live to the creative best, to the way that God has made each one of us. I can reach my full potential in God by accepting who I am, being the person that I am, rather than trying to be like somebody else, compare myself with somebody else, judge or condemn somebody else, but just live to be free to be me.